You've probably felt it before, walking into a room and noticing the weight of silence that no one else seems to acknowledge. The air is thick, though no words have been spoken. Someone laughs, but it rings hollow. The conversation flows, but beneath it, something is missing, something vital. In those moments, you wonder, am I the only one who feels this? To be an empath in a world that often feels soulless is to live as if your skin is thinner, your nerves tuned to a different frequency. You sense currents that others dismiss, the subtle pull between sincerity and pretense, vitality and emptiness. And while this sensitivity may have made you feel like an outsider, it is also your gift, one that philosophers, mystics, and even scientists have hinted at across the ages. Carl Jung spoke of archetypes, universal patterns that shape human experience. Among them is the figure of the seer, the one who perceives beyond appearances. Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet, describes souls whose purpose was to awaken light in times of darkness. Ingo Swann, pioneer of remote viewing, demonstrated that perception need not be confined to the senses alone. Even Einstein, in his quieter reflections, warned against the illusion of separateness. Across traditions, from the mystics of Sufism to the seers of Vedic India, the message repeats. There are those who feel more deeply because they are meant to. But feeling deeply in a world that rewards numbness is no easy task. Empathy, once a natural human bond, now becomes a battlefield. You may find yourself drained by conversations that others find casual or disturbed by a dissonance no one else detects. You might see through masks too quickly, notice the gap between words and energy, or ache with the suffering that others pass by. And this is not weakness, it is clarity. Still, clarity can be lonely. That's why this journey matters, not just to identify that you are an empath, but to recognize the signs that confirm it, to anchor yourself in knowledge rather than doubt. The world may be full of distractions, but it is also full of signals waiting to be read. When you know what to look for, your sensitivity becomes less of a burden and more of a compass. And so in this exploration, we will uncover 5 powerful signs that reveal the empath's path in a soulless world. They are not tests you pass or fail, but mirrors, reflections of who you are and what you carry. By the end, you may discover that what once felt like isolation is actually initiation. You are not alone. You never were. And then comes another sign you can't ignore. One of the first and clearest signs that you are an empath in a soulless world is this. You sense the truth beneath the words. Long before someone admits they are anxious, you've already felt the tightness in their chest. Long before they confess their anger, you've already caught the subtle edge in their tone. Long before they say they are hurting, you've already carried some of their sorrow in your own body. To live with this level of perception is to constantly pick up the frequencies most people ignore. Neuroscience offers one explanation: mirror neurons. These specialized cells fire not only when we act, but when we observe another's action, emotion, or even intention. They create resonance, allowing us to feel with others. For most, this resonance is faint. For the empath, it is a thunderclap. Your nervous system is not just registering information, it is absorbing it. Imagine a gathering at work. The meeting begins with polite chatter, everyone insisting they're doing fine. But you notice the subtle shift in the air, the way one colleague's smile tightens at the corners, the almost imperceptible pause before another agrees, the way the energy of the room dips when a certain name is mentioned. By the end of the meeting, your body feels heavy with tension that was never spoken aloud. Everyone else walks away relieved that the meeting was uneventful, but you leave carrying the weight of what was unsaid. This is the life of an empath. Your body becomes an instrument tuned to play the silent music of the collective. Carl Jung might have called this the gift of the intuitive function, the capacity to perceive what lies just beyond conscious awareness. He noted that intuition often brings knowledge that feels immediate, irrational, yet profoundly accurate. For the empath, this is daily life. You don't just hear words, you feel their shadows. You don't just see a smile, you notice whether it reaches the eyes. But here is the paradox. In a world that often rewards the mask more than the face, this sensitivity can feel like both a blessing and a curse. Um, when you notice what others ignore, you may struggle with the pressure to play along, to pretend you don't feel the dissonance. The soulless thrive in this pretense. They trade in surfaces, in hollow laughter, in carefully staged expressions. For them, reality is performance. For you, performance is exhausting. Edgar Cayce once said that the spirit of truth is written in the heart. When you recognize falseness, when you sense energy that contradicts words, you are reading that deeper script. Ingo Swann, too, believed that human consciousness has sensory channels beyond the five we are taught in school. What you feel may not be visible, but it is no less real. Albert Einstein echoed this in his reflections on human connection, warning that the illusion of separateness blinds us from recognizing the subtle ways we influence and affect each other. Still, being tuned to unspoken truths can leave you raw. You may find yourself carrying emotions that are not your own, weighed down by atmospheres you never chose. At times you wonder, am I broken for feeling this much? But the truth is the opposite. Your perception is not a flaw. It is a compass. It warns you of deception, alerts you to suffering, and reveals the gap between appearance and essence. And if this resonates with you, recognize it for what it is. The first mark of the empath. You are not just hearing the music of life. You are also listening to the spaces between the notes. And while others may walk blind through the silence, you are awake to the hidden chorus. In a soulless world, that awareness is not just rare, it is sacred. And then comes another sign you can't ignore. If the first sign of being an empath is sensing what others don't say, the next one is even more demanding. You don't just notice the atmosphere, you carry it. When you walk into a room, you don't simply observe its energy, you absorb it into your bones. The tension between coworkers lingers in your chest. The unspoken sadness in a friend's home sits heavy in your stomach. Even joy is contagious. When laughter is genuine, your whole body lights up as though you've stepped into sunlight. This isn't imagination, it's resonance. Modern neuroscience explains it as emotional contagion, the transfer of affect from one nervous system to another through micro-expressions, through tone, posture, and rhythm. But for empaths, this process is amplified. What others barely notice, you metabolize. Where most people can leave the atmosphere behind when they walk out of the door, you carry it long after. Consider this story. A woman attends a family gathering where everyone insists that everything is fine. Plates are filled, polite conversations are exchanged, laughter echoes through the room. But beneath it all, she feels the undercurrent of unspoken resentments, tension like static in the air. Hours later, back in her own apartment, she is exhausted. Her body aches as though she had fought a battle. She cannot explain why, only that the weight followed her home. This is the life of the empath. You are the tuning fork that never stops vibrating to the song of the room. Carl Jung once remarked that the unconscious is not just personal, but collective. Empaths are particularly porous to this collective field, catching echoes of what the group refuses to acknowledge. Edgar Cayce suggested that souls with heightened sensitivity were often sent to act as healers, precisely because they could feel the hidden wounds of others. And Ingo Swann's research in remote viewing demonstrated that perception is not bound by the immediate senses. Consciousness reaches farther than the body admits. All of these perspectives affirm what you already know from experience. You don't just read the energy, you hold it. But here lies the danger. In a world that often feels soulless, where surfaces are curated and authenticity is rare, carrying other people's energy can become overwhelming. The soulless are particularly skilled at projecting emptiness that drains or negativity that destabilizes. They thrive by offloading their heaviness onto the most receptive target, often the empath. And if you are not careful, you become the emotional landfill of every environment you enter. Yet within this burden lies a sacred possibility. To feel the weight of the room is also to sense where healing is needed. It means you can spot the fracture before it breaks. You can notice the loneliness behind the smile. You can bring calm into chaos simply by your grounded presence. Like a candle in a dark room, your energy shifts the balance for everyone else, even if they never realize it. The key is learning to distinguish what is yours from what is not. Without this discernment, you drown in borrowed storms. With it, you become a lighthouse, absorbing nothing, yet illuminating everything. And so, if you recognize yourself in this story, if you have ever walked into a room and felt as though the atmosphere tattooed itself onto your skin, know this: it is not a flaw. It is the second mark of the empath. You are the one who carries the weight of the room, not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to feel what the soulless cannot. And as you carry this weight, another realization emerges, waiting to be named. And that is when you discover the next sign. You see through masks. To be an empath in a soulless world is to live among actors. The performance may be polished, smiles at the right time, handshakes firm, words rehearsed, but you know when the script doesn't match the soul. You can see the cracks in the mask. History offers us countless examples of how masks dominate human life. Think of the Venetian Carnival, where nobles wore elaborate disguises to mingle undetected. Behind porcelain smiles and painted eyes, people traded secrets, committed betrayals, or played out desires they would never dare reveal in daylight. To outsiders, the mask was impenetrable. But imagine being someone who, even behind layers of costume, still sensed the tremor in the voice, the hollowness in the laughter. That is the life of the empath. You were born to see through disguises that others accept as real. Carl Jung described the persona as the mask we present to society, the role we adopt to be accepted. The persona itself is not inherently false. It helps us function. But when the mask hardens into a facade, when it becomes a substitute for the soul, it leaves a hollow echo. Empaths are exquisitely attuned to that echo. They notice the dissonance between what someone projects and what vibrates beneath. A polished persona cannot hide the absence of authenticity. Modern neuroscience gives us further insight. Research into microexpressions, the fleeting facial cues that reveal hidden emotion, shows that while most people miss them, sensitive observers catch them instinctively. An empath's nervous system is primed to detect these glitches in the mask, the tiny giveaways that reveal what words are trying to conceal. It's as if the empath carries an internal lie detector, not mechanical but intuitive, whispering, "This doesn't match." The soulless world, however, thrives on masks. From curated social media personas to corporate cultures of forced positivity, the absence of authenticity is normalized. This is why your perception can feel alienating. Others may praise the mask. You notice the vacancy behind it. They see charisma. You sense manipulation. They admire composure. You feel repression. Edgar Cayce believed that one of the greatest human tasks was alignment, bringing the outer life into harmony with the inner spirit. For those who refuse this work, the mask becomes their identity. But for the empath, the presence of such dissonance is painful, sometimes even intolerable. You cannot pretend not to notice. Ingo Swann once remarked that human perception extends beyond the obvious into realms most dismiss as impossible. To see through masks is one form of this extended perception. It's not paranormal, it's deeply human. But in a soulless world, it feels almost supernatural because so few are willing to admit what they sense. This gift is double-edged. It can protect you because you recognize deception before it harms you. But it can also isolate you because you live with knowledge that others deny. Imagine Cassandra of Troy, cursed to see the truth yet never believed. Many empaths carry a version of that fate, perceiving falsehoods that others not only overlook but actively defend. And yet, this vision is sacred. To see through masks is to honor reality over performance, soul over facade. It means you cannot be easily manipulated because you sense the emptiness behind charm. It means you can guide others toward authenticity simply by refusing to participate in the illusion. So if you have ever felt the uncanny recognition that someone's smile was paper thin, that their words were hollow, that their presence rang like an empty vessel, this is not paranoia. It is perception. It is the next sign of the empath in a soulless world. You see through masks, and you remind the world that no disguise can substitute for a soul. And as you recognize this truth, another pattern emerges, the way even what others call normal can leave you utterly drained. For most people, the ordinary pace of modern life is tolerable. Crowded malls, fluorescent lit offices, endless small talk, the constant hum of digital noise, these things may irritate, but they rarely undo them. For an empath, however, the very environments others call normal can feel like invisible storms. Where others pass through untouched, you come out exhausted, as if life itself had siphoned your energy away. This is not weakness. It is recognition. Your body is simply unwilling to lie about what it knows. That much of what passes for normal in a soulless world is actually profoundly unnatural. History offers us a metaphor. In the Roman Empire, bread and circuses were offered to keep the masses entertained and compliant. The noise of spectacle was meant to dull the hunger for truth. For most citizens, the distraction worked. But imagine being among the few who could see through the glittering games and sense the hollowness beneath. The brutality disguised as entertainment, the emptiness wrapped in grandeur. For the empath, modern bread and circuses take the form of overstimulation, shallow conversations, and environments built for consumption rather than connection. What others call fun, you often feel as depletion. Neuroscience helps us understand why. Studies on sensory processing sensitivity show that some nervous systems are biologically wired to process more information per second. This means brighter lights, louder noises, and denser atmospheres hit you with greater force. For the empath, a crowded subway station isn't just busy, it's a flood of psychic static. A networking event isn't just tiring, it feels like 1,000 unspoken emotions pressing against your skin. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the task of becoming whole in a fractured world. To the empath, individuation often requires resisting the pull of what the collective accepts as normal. You are asked to protect your own rhythm, even when the world insists you keep pace with its frenzy. Edgar Cayce warned that when the soul ignores its true vibration, illness or exhaustion soon follows. And Ingo Swann's experiments hinted at the same. Perception without boundary leads to energetic drain. The paradox is that while you may feel undone by environments others consider harmless, you are also revitalized by what others overlook: silence, beauty, sacred space. A walk in the forest might restore you more than a week's vacation at a resort. A genuine conversation with one trusted friend may nourish you more deeply than a room full of admirers. Where the soulless crave distraction, you crave depth. Where they run from silence, you are saved by it. This difference can leave you feeling alien. You may wonder why you tire so quickly, why you cannot tolerate what everyone else endures. But understand this: your exhaustion is not failure. It is feedback. It is your soul refusing to normalize what drains it. Think of it this way: a canary in a coal mine collapses first, not because it is weak, but because it is sensitive enough to detect the poison others cannot. Empaths are the canaries of the human collective. What sickens you reveals what the culture is hiding. Your depletion is data. So if you have ever returned home from just a normal day only to feel hollowed out, if you've ever been bewildered by how something so ordinary could feel so corrosive, recognize this as a sign. You are not overreacting, you are perceiving. And in a soulless world, your refusal to be numbed is not a liability. It is proof that your inner flame still burns. And that inner flame leads to something even more profound. A truth that no emptiness can erase. Perhaps the clearest sign of all is this: you carry a flame that refuses to die. If there is one final sign that reveals you are an empath in a soulless world, it is this. No matter how much emptiness surrounds you, a small flame inside refuses to go out. You may bend, you may tire, you may even break down in tears. But something in you keeps choosing life, meaning, and connection. That flame is the signature of your soul. History gives us a striking image. During the long winter at Valley Forge in 1777, George Washington's army nearly collapsed from hunger, cold, and despair. Soldiers wrapped rags around their feet, marched barefoot in the snow, and watched comrades fall daily. By all logic, the flame of their cause should have died there. Yet, against every odd, the spark of endurance remained. What sustained them was not comfort, not evidence of victory. It was an inner fire that refused to be extinguished. Empaths live in that same paradox. Even when surrounded by lifelessness, their spirit keeps burning. Carl Jung taught that the process of individuation requires us to confront the shadow, the forces of emptiness, falseness, and despair. For most people, this confrontation is avoided, masked by distraction. But empaths cannot avoid it. They feel it, they live it, they wrestle with it. And in that wrestling, they discover a truth others miss. The flame is not dependent on external conditions. It is self-sustaining. Edgar Cayce often spoke of the soul as a spark of the divine. He insisted that even in the darkest circumstances, the soul carries its own light, waiting to be fanned into a guiding fire. Neuroscience gives us a curious echo. Research on resilience shows that those who endure trauma yet still find meaning often thrive later in life. They are not untouched by suffering. They are transformed by it. For the empath, resilience is not a luxury. It is a necessity born of constant exposure to the world's hollowness. But here's the challenge. The soulless world does not celebrate your flame. It tries to smother it. Through cynicism, manipulation, or relentless noise, it whispers, stop caring, stop feeling, stop believing. And yet, here you are. Despite every attempt to numb you, you still cry at beauty. You still ache at injustice. You still long for truth. Like the ancient myth of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, you too carry a stolen flame, unwanted by the powers of emptiness, but desperately needed by those who still hunger for warmth. This endurance is not about grand gestures. Sometimes it shows itself in the smallest choices. Refusing to gossip when others do. Offering kindness when none is expected. Creating art that no one asked for but someone needed. Every time you choose authenticity over apathy, you feed the flame. And so if you have ever wondered why you can't just turn it off, why you keep feeling and caring even when it costs you, know that this is not weakness. It is the final sign. You carry within you a flame that the soulless cannot comprehend. You may feel alone in this, but history reminds us that the smallest fire can outlast the longest night. The empires of distraction will crumble, but the candle you guard will still be burning. And as this truth settles in, the journey does not end here. It opens into a larger horizon, a place where all these signs converge into meaning. That is where we arrive at the conclusion. So here we are, at the end of this exploration, and perhaps at the beginning of something larger. We began with a question. What does it mean to be an empath in a soulless world? Along the way, we traced 5 signs that reveal this path. The way you feel what others don't say, the way you carry the weight of the room, the way you see through masks, the way you are drained by what passes as normal, and the way you guard a flame that refuses to die. Each of these signs is more than a trait. Together, they form a map, a reminder that sensitivity is not weakness, but emphasis, sacred perception. Carl Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. For the empath, that privilege is also a responsibility. You cannot turn off what you see and feel, but you can choose how to live with it. You can collapse under the weight of emptiness, or you can use your sensitivity as a compass, guiding you toward authenticity and depth. Edgar Cayce believed that the soul's task was not simply to survive the world, but to transform it by presence. Ingo Swann reminded us that perception itself is power, a bridge between the seen and unseen. And even Einstein, reflecting on the illusion of separateness, urged us to widen our circle of compassion. All of these voices echo into your life. They remind you that your gift is part of a lineage, an ancient role carried by seers, healers, artists, and visionaries who felt too much, but who also saw too clearly to be fooled by the world's hollow masks. But let's be honest, carrying this gift is not easy. It means you will often walk against the current. You may feel misunderstood, even isolated. Yet history is clear. The ones who carried light in dark times were rarely the ones applauded for blending in. They were the ones who dared to remain human when the world around them grew mechanical. So if you recognize yourself in these signs, take this as more than validation. Take it as initiation. Your empathy is not an accident. It is a flame meant to be protected, nurtured, and shared. The soulless world may drain you, but it cannot define you. Your sensitivity is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a journey, and that journey continues. Here on Awakened Wisdom, we will keep walking together into what it truly means to be an empath, how to protect your energy, how to turn sensitivity into strength, and how to live with clarity in a world that often prefers illusion. If this message resonates with you, stay with us. Because the path of the empath is not one you are meant to walk alone. You are not alone. You never were. And together, we will keep the flame alive.